Yeah, we'll see what Congress does. Speaking of my next guest, Charlie Gasparino, thank you so much. You're awesome yesterday, but every day. And speaking of senators who were there grilling Goldman Sachs executives yesterday, Senator Ted Kaufman of Delaware was one of them. He joins us now from Capitol Hill. Senator, it's always terrific to see you. Charlie, I don't know if you
David,
heard what Charlie Gasparino was talking about.
Oh, yeah, I did.
But the issue of fiduciary duty.
I guess, huh?
Do you, Senator, is that the plan? Are you going to impose fiduciary duty on the operations of broker-dealers in this country?
It's definitely under discussion. It's something that I'm in favor of. I think a lot of people are talking about it. It's one of those things that we work out. If we ever get this bill to the floor, right now, as you know, the Republicans are blocking us even moving to the bill. But I want to move to the bill and start considering some of these things out in the open. I think we've had enough of behind-the-scenes discussions which went on, which were good up until a point. But I have no idea why the Republicans are blocking this bill and are holding out for more behind-the-scenes discussions. After all, it was Republicans during health care that kept talking about transparency. We should all do this out in the open. We should do this out in the open. We should move the bills. And I think this fiduciary responsibility is one of the issues we'll be dealing with. But obviously, Dagan, the big issue I'm concerned about is too big to fail.
But, you know, Senator, you mentioned too big to fail, and that's when I talk to Republicans. Yeah. They tell me this thing has about 40, that's an exaggeration, but many loopholes in there which allows too big to fail to exist. For example, certain creditors get bailed out. You know, 100 cents on the dollar from that $50 billion slush fund you guys created. And if a creditor knows they're going to get bailed out, these are creditors of banks, then they're more likely to keep giving the bank money, keep financing its risky operations. So don't you really have to go back to the drawing board and start plugging those loopholes into too big to fail?
No, look. No, what we got to do is get on the floor and start amending and work as a theory. I don't happen to agree with your analysis of that part of the bill, but you have a right to that opinion, and we'll vote on the floor, and other senators will vote, and we'll make our decision. But we have a bill now. We have a bill out of the Banking Committee, but the way this thing works in the Senate is it then comes to the floor and people offer amendments. This is not my $50 billion fund to bail these people out, and it definitely is not going to go to the creditors under the law if you take a look at the law. So you should look at what's actually in the bill as we have it now.
Are you saying there is no mechanism for too big to fail in this bill?
No, I'm not saying there's no mechanism too big to fail. There is a resolution authority. I pointed out how difficult it would be. No, well, wait a minute. It's all going to be difficult. I'm pointing out, I think what the Republicans are saying is we should give it to bankruptcy and just let the bankruptcy court handle it. That's the last proposal that they made on the floor. And I'm open to whatever suggestions they make. Let's get on the floor and let's vote up.
What's wrong with that?
What, Senator?
Bankruptcy? Can you imagine? We went through bankruptcy with Lehman Brothers. Do you see how well that worked out?
Yeah, but that's
we tried to go through that.
But Senator, go back to in terms of the speed with which you want to move on this bill. If you impose fiduciary duty on broker-dealers in this country, how would you upend their business, and what would that do to liquidity and availability of credit in this country to everybody?
Well, the lack of fiduciary relationship as went on in the hearing yesterday. If you listen closely to what went on, and in terms of too big to fail, we just went through a $2.5 trillion meltdown where millions of people lost their jobs. And one of the reasons is, in my opinion, is because Goldman Sachs and others in the same business were engaged in a credible conflict of interest. One of the things that was very concerning to me yesterday during the discussion was no one would admit, from Lloyd Blankfein all the way down the line, that selling securities, selling CDOs, that had securities in it, and at the same time selling those securities short for your own portfolio is a conflict of interest. Now, there are arguments you can make. They're just trying to balance their books and the rest of that.
Well,
but there's a conflict of interest.
But that goes to the root. That's the heart of Wall Street. If you're a market maker, you're the middleman.
No. The heart. What you have, and that's the reason why I want to get people. So if you have clients, you're not doing proprietary trading. And that's why I want to separate out the investment banks from the commercial banks. But essentially, no, that's not. If you and I and anyone else that has a long position in a stock can always straighten our situation by selling the stock. That's what we do. We don't have to sell it short on the stock. And I'm for selling short. I don't have anything wrong with selling short.
Senator, did you think that Goldman Sachs was being dishonest? Did you think that Lloyd Blankfein, the CEO, was dishonest yesterday?
No, I don't think he was dishonest because he never said that it wasn't a conflict. He just kind of said, I don't think it's a conflict or anything like that. The real question, Charlie, that came out of this thing to me was, since they said it wasn't a conflict, the reason why it was so important whether it was a conflict, because at what point did they basically decide the housing market's going south and continue to sell the CDOs with those in it? That's the real point, because that's so that's the point that we had to get to, because they just drove these CDOs into the ground. And the other thing that was concerning is the lack of oversight on these stated loans and what was in these CDOs that they were selling.
Senator, do you do your own personal investing? Because you do sound like you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, I hate to throw around my education, but I did go to Wharton. I'm not.
Well, I wasn't calling you a doofus.
I don't.
Just so you know,
I didn't call you a doofus.
I did not call you a doofus.
No. I know you. I know. It was just fun. Look, I did go there, and I have been doing personal investing for 50 years. And I'll tell you what, I've got a real education in the last year and a half on things that have gone on since I had a real firm interest.
You need a degree in semantics, though, to get through the Goldman Sachs testimony.
By the way, yeah, absolutely need a degree in semantics. That's absolutely right.
Senator, it was great to see you. Thank you, sir, so much.
Hey,
Senator.
thanks for having me on.